Yatsen Li. I'm the chairman of Vantage Asia Holdings, so we're half investment bankers and half investors, so we're in corporate finance. There's generally a Chinese person somewhere in the equation.
Do you think discrimination is alive and well in the Australian workplace?
I think it is, and it may not be overt, it may not be a conscious thing, it may be as simple as you get on with people who are like you. You mix with people, you converse better with people. People who are like you have the same background, talk the same way, look similar, grew up with the same sorts of people. Friends have similar life experiences. You may find them just easier to relate to. And therefore you form closer relationships with those people, and they're the people that you interact with, and they're the people who you promote or you hire or you choose to work with.
And if we take that a step further, do you think racism is alive and well?
I think the racism that exists now is, it's a much more nuanced, subtle type of racism. It's a polite, well-mannered, sometimes not even poorly meaning. It's not born out of malevolence or something. It's just a product of pre-held conceptions about what a particular culture is, or what a particular culture does or likes or eats, or, you know. So I think those stereotypes and those prejudices are alive and well in Australia, as they are in most societies.
And how have they affected you in your professional and indeed your personal life?
Professionally, to start with, I think I'd say, look, sometimes stereotypes can work for you and against you. So I used to work for a large Australian insurance company, for instance, and they were looking for somebody to send to China to do their China work. And because I looked Chinese and had a Chinese background, they immediately went, "Oh, who should we send to China? There's Jason over there. He's Chinese. We'll just send him," which I didn't complain about, because I really wanted to go and live and work in China. It didn't necessarily mean that I had any knowledge or any particular capability around China at the time. So that was an example of when a stereotype can work for you. But the flip side is it can also work against you. And again, those stereotypes, you know, if somebody with Chinese heritage, what sort of a person are they? What is their personality like? Are they an outgoing person? Are they really good at maths and accounting and finance type functions as opposed to other types of functions? These stereotypes can work to people's disadvantage, but there is a particular very concerning issue that's going on in the Australian public debate now around what's termed Chinese political influence. And I think that is a particularly dangerous debate, because it's really disenfranchising and it causes distrust for people with a Chinese background.
What is your concern about that? Is it that all Chinese Australians are being lumped in the same basket?
This is a really complex issue, and I think it's an extremely dangerous one for Australia. You remember the first rise of Pauline Hanson, the late 1990s. You know, she said that Australia was being swamped by Asians, and the Asian Australian community mobilised. It organised politically and was very vocal. Whereas now, in the context of this debate around Chinese political influence and interference, there's a real lack of Chinese voices. Nobody wants to raise their voice because they're concerned that people will go, "See, you're pro-Beijing, you're in cahoots with the Chinese Communist Party." So it's a really silencing sort of phenomenon, number one. Number two, it's also really disenfranchising, because the use of language on the one hand is very loose. When you say Chinese, I'm Chinese from a civilizational point of view, because my parents are Chinese and my cultural heritage is Chinese, but I've got nothing to do with the People's Republic.
More broadly, why do you think there are so few Asian Australians in leadership positions? Is it as simple as a lack of mentors, that you can't be what you can't see, or are there more complex factors at work?
There is the factor of obviously stereotyping and prejudices. So I remember my first legal job, and again I got this job because my girlfriend's mother, who was a very senior lawyer, and she gave me a job in this law firm. And I remember some of these instances very clearly. There was a client who'd come up, and my girlfriend's mother, my boss, introduced me to this client and said, "Oh, this is Jason, and Jason's going to be writing your prospectus." And then he looked at me, and I didn't hear this, but apparently he said to my boss at the time, he looks like a lovely fellow, but are you sure his English is good enough? And Jenny at that time said, "Oh, he recently topped the state in 3-unit English, so I think it's fine." So there are these prejudices, not out of malice. I don't think they're born out of malice. It's quite a human thing. You know, if you don't know something very well, you only have certain things to judge something by, and obviously appearances are the only data set that you have, and you make judgments based on that. And so I think part of our challenge is how to break down some of those prejudices and those stereotypes.
How do we change the preconceptions, the stereotypes?
Through sponsorship, through publicity, and telling the stories, just as we are telling now, by featuring more people from different backgrounds in different types of leadership positions, and the stories are out there. It's just that often they don't get told.